Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Inside Story with Student Life. My name is Tierza Watts. I'm the Director of Student Life, and I'm excited to have with me today Jill Rubin, who's the Director of our Women and Gender Center. We're going to talk a little bit about what their office does, some programming that they sponsor that you can participate in, and some tips for success. So I'd like to start by having Jill introduce herself. If you would tell us a little bit about you and maybe share something you were involved in college that was meaningful to you.
Hello, friends. My name is Jill Rubin. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the semi-new, not quite new. I keep saying new, but it's been a year. Women and Gender Center Director at CU Denver. I'm part of the Center for Identity and Inclusion, which is our student-facing diversity office on campus. And some things that were meaningful to me. So when I got into grad school, I started as a non-degree seeking student. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I my first week of my first graduate class, there was a student leader in that class who immediately invited me to join the Feminist Graduate Student Association. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm not actually like a full-time student yet. And she was like, no, you should come. So I went to the first meeting and everyone was really friendly. By the end of the meeting, she had talked me into being on the SUSA graduate planning committee. So SUSA is the Southeastern Women's Associations conference. I had never been to a conference before, let alone involved in working on a conference. And I think the ways that she made me feel empowered to do new things and to be a leader really launched me in the direction of where I am today, because I wanted to do that for other people. It made me feel like I could make a difference, and it was just really meaningful for me.
That is a great example. Students who are listening to this video, if you happen to be one of our student leaders, we have over 400 students in elected or appointed student leadership positions on campus. I want you to think about what Jill just said. It is important to invite people, maybe very caringly and kindly harass them into coming to a meeting just to check it out. And it can have life-changing results. Be that meaningful connections, you make friends, and it can also, in Jill's case, lead you to a career. Yeah. So let's jump into talking a little bit about your office. Could you tell us a little bit about what the Women and Gender Center provides to CU Denver students?
Sure thing. So I think our mission statement, which is also on our website, encompasses a lot of that. We provide advocacy, education, resources, and support for students overcoming gender-specific barriers to success. And so when students come into our office, sometimes they're looking for resources. We have a lot of resources. So we have sexual health resources. That means barrier methods, condoms, dental dams, gloves, finger cots, lubricants, that sort of thing. We have a lot of menstrual products, pads, tampons, discs, cups, heating pads, ice packs. I've been doing some of this work around statistics for a long time. You'd be really surprised by how much menstruation pain and getting caught off guard can keep people out of classes. So it can be a really useful resource to have, especially if you're not in one of the CU Denver buildings that has some of the menstrual products available on the first floor. We also have parenting resources for our parents on campus. We have some diapers, baby wipes. We have a lactation fridge and a lactation freezer. And I think I mentioned ice pads before. Sometimes that can be really helpful for lactation pain. We also have a bookshelf, so students are welcome to come explore, check out books. They're on different gender themes and how they intersect with a number of other topics, including sexual orientation, race, economics, and we're always open to purchasing new books if people feel like that's important for them. We also have a clothing closet. So there's a couple of clothing closets on campus. Ours is, it has a broader range of clothes. So it's not just professional clothes, it's also casual, fun clothing. The clothing closet is for a couple of reasons. It's for emergencies. So as I mentioned before, menstruation can sometimes catch us off guard. So if you have any accidents, we have clothing to help with that. It's also, we've had students that have had emergencies where clothing is ripped, or they've experienced maybe some comments on their clothing choices, and they've now felt really uncomfortable. It's part of some of the sexist barriers that prevent women and femme folks from fully engaging in school. So we're trying to provide those resources to make sure everyone feels comfortable and safe. And then the last purpose is for our trans, non-binary, and gender expansive students. You know, if you're looking to explore your gender identity, or if you need to get new clothing, we're a great starting point. We're donation based, so if you ever have clothing that you're like, hey, you know, this is too big, too small now, or I'm not digging this, like I bought it online, it doesn't look like how I wanted it to, and I don't want to go through the steps of returning it, or you know, the policy of this place is that they don't do returns, whatever the case may be. You're moving, that happens a lot. Feel free to drop any clothing off that you want to. We have a big purple box in front of our office for any donations.
Wonderful.
We're also just a student space. So we've got lots of self-care resources, coloring books, fidget rings. I'm looking to see if I have any fidget toys on my desk.
Oh, yeah, you push them.
Mess with to help folks kind of relax, get some sensory stimulation, but also, you know, if you have questions about sexual health, menstrual health, gender, sexism, any of it, men and masculinity, or you just want to talk, you need a place to connect with folks. Our student staff is absolutely fabulous, and we love when people come and visit. So feel free to stop by and check us out. We also do some programming around gender, and we partner with a lot of student orgs and other offices on campus. So if you're interested in some of that, please stay tuned. We have a social media that's part of our larger Center for Identity and Inclusion office at CU Denver _CII. And so we put a lot of our programming up on our story, and we do occasionally we have, you know, educational bits. Our students sometimes do Instagram lives. It's lots of fun, so check us out. We also have a newsletter that you can connect with for our larger CII office that we're involved in, and you can sign up for the newsletter through our CII website. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. I know it's a mouthful, but
it's comprehensive, and I don't know that students know that. So I appreciate you giving us all that detail. Students, I'll link in our show notes the Instagram account, their website, and all that good stuff, so that you can easily find it. Jill, I'm curious to know, what drew you to working with women and femme students?
This is also like part of my story, I guess. There's a couple of things. I think growing up in the 90s and 2000s, there was not the dialogue that we have right now on gender, and a lot of the sexism, biphobias, other stuff that I experienced, I didn't recognize as a problem. It was stuff that I experienced and internalized, and you know, just kind of continued my life. And when I was in my early 20s, after I had gotten out of my undergraduate program, I applied and got accepted to a teaching program abroad in South Korea. And South Korea by no means is, I mean, the sexism here is not any less prevalent than it is in South Korea, but I didn't have my family or my very long-term close friends. And so all of a sudden I was in a situation where I was experiencing sexism without any of the support networks that I had, the informal support networks I had. And so it was a lot harder for me to just normalize it, to kind of accept that it was happening and move on with my life, because I was in a different place. And I was rethinking all sorts of things in my life. And so I got more involved in feminist activism in South Korea. And then I came back and got really charged through my graduate studies program, where I found working with other women and femme folks and giving them support and tools and resources and education to co-explore a lot of these topics was really fulfilling and meaningful for me. And I think the older I get, it's also being able to provide women and femme students that the support that I kind of wish I had gotten when I was younger, that the dialogues that just weren't happening in the 90s.
Right. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. One of the things that I was moved by this past fall was a new program that you guys launched called the Body Project. And I really appreciated what you shared with me about it in the hallway. And then I was like, yes, let's advertise this for you. So can you tell our audience a little bit more about the Body Project and what do students learn if they come to those 2 sessions?
Yeah. I'm sorry. So jazzed about this program.
Yeah.
So the Body Project is it's an evidence-based program that helps students improve body image and reduce body dissatisfaction. So, a lot of folks have experienced a range of feelings about their bodies based on what we're taught through social media, through dialogue with our families and our friends, and kind of all of these internalized beliefs in the medical care system. Like we get messages just kind of nonstop about what our bodies should look like and what that means about us. And the Body Project is a 4-hour program that empowers women, but also non-binary students to resist cultural pressures to accept the appearance ideal, or that idea of what we're supposed to look like, to help us figure out how to reallocate some of our time to something that that's really meaningful and enriching for us, as opposed to using that time to focus on a body ideal that's maybe a little unrealistic, and can be very harmful. Increasing just confidence and body satisfaction overall, and helping students, really bond and talk through some of these pieces around like what our society is telling us and what is going to be most meaningful and useful for us moving forward. It's a really wonderful program. There's lots of like activities. It's all student led, so it's based on the peer education model, so that we learn better from folks that are like us, and that we can relate to. And so we have some really fabulous student staff that are trained in this program. It's 2 sessions that are held 1 week apart. So you come, you do some activities, you talk through some big pieces, and then you have like a week to digest all of that. And then you come back and you kind of practice the skills that you need to handle difficult situations and conversations with others. Because a lot of times, even if you're like, yeah, I hate the body ideal, like I'm done with it, I want to move on with my life and learn French and spend my time learning French. Like that's just as an example. That's what I'm going to do instead of trying to focus on dieting, or focus on X, Y, and Z. It can be really hard when you're like at dinner with your family, or you're going clothing shopping with your friend. And so there's a lot of, in that second session, there's a lot of time spent unpacking, like, how can we handle these conversations in ways that feel good for us.
Okay, thank you. Well, students, I know that they'll have upcoming sessions of the Body Project, and I'll put the next set of upcoming sessions in our show notes as well. Jill, I'm always curious when I'm interviewing staff that are part of an office where they do some outward facing work with students. I'd like to know kind of 3 to 5 tips you have for women and femme students for just being successful on our campus. What should they connect with, plug into, think about, reflect on, all those good things?
Sure. So there's a number of things that I think there's like tips that I would share with women and femme folk in general that through my career I think have come up a couple, like, over and over again in a lot of the programming research. Like there's these big environmental things that are impacting women and femme folks. And, obviously a large part of my job is working with others to at least shape the environment of the institution, the university. And at the same time, folks are experiencing, microaggressions, sexism in a variety of ways all of the time. And so I think some of the conversation has to be like, yes, and we're gonna work on the institutional, larger scale stuff. And there are some things that you can potentially do to help navigate sexism in your day-to-day life that maybe are worth considering. And a lot of these are focused on self-advocacy techniques that you can use. And I just want to be clear up front, like I have some ideas, but depending on where you, like your own unique identity, Maybe these will be useful to you. Maybe you'll say, you know, this isn't where I'm at right now. I'd rather fight the good fight and get and spend my energy in activism, which is also super valuable.
Yeah.
So some of the strategies that you can use if they serve you, that I talk to students a lot about, practice not apologizing for taking up space or having an opinion. There's nothing wrong with apologizing if you think that you've done something wrong or harmful to somebody else that you care about. And a lot of times, women are taught from a really young age not to take up too much space, and not to be too loud. And these things can they can impact us in a variety of ways, both in the classroom when we're trying to claim our education, but also in our professional settings when we're trying to navigate the workforce. And so one way that you can practice not apologizing for, you know, being a spectacular human being, really, is to start to switch some of your language from sorry to thank you. So instead of saying like, sorry for rambling, or sorry for taking up so much of your time, you say, you know, thank you for your time, or you know, thank you for hearing the contributions I have to our team, like to this meeting or this idea. And you know, the language shift might not seem like a big deal, but in terms of taking credit for your work and showing your power in different spaces that are, you know, historically not built for women, were not intended to include us, it can be powerful. And there's some research to back that up. That kind of falls into some of my next kind of recommendation, which is to take credit. There's a tendency, and I think this is one of those things that are frequently taught to women and femme folks at a young age, to not to be very humble. And there's nothing wrong with being humble, especially if you're in a situation where you have a lot to learn. But women and femme folks sometimes tend to stay humble, even in situations where they are the expert in the room. And they'll often deflect compliments that have to do with their value. I'm not necessarily saying that everyone needs to accept all compliments, because a lot of times women get compliments that are really inappropriate in different settings. But in terms of work or things that you've achieved or how you contribute to a group, I encourage women and femme folks to start being mindful of maybe how they're dialoguing around that and taking credit for what they bring to the table. So an example of that would be, you know, I hear all the time, like I'll tell a student, or I've seen students be told like, hey, you know, I really appreciate this program that you were working on. And they'll default to deflecting, and they'll be like, oh, it wasn't really me. It was Bobby and Susie and whoever.
It was the committee. It was all of us.
It was all of us. And that might be, there's validity in that. Sometimes students will say that, or really women and femme folk in general, professional staff too, will say that when they've done all of the work and they stayed up like all night, 5 days in a row. And also, even if you did do something as a group, like being able to recognize your own achievement is powerful. So the trick that I give to that is to try a 5-second rule. Somebody says like, hey, Jill, you did just such great work at, I'm going to use the example that I recently had, the Women in Gender Equity and Leadership Summits, which I had a fabulous planning committee for. I could say, thank you. I'm going to wait 5 seconds. 1, 2, in my head. I worked really hard in that committee. There was so much that I worked really hard on. I was really lucky to have, you know, great team members, but I really value that you see the effort and the organization and strategy that I brought to the table. So highlighting kind of what you've done and the value that it has. And the last tip that I bring to the table that people could consider is to not, and I think I went to the National Women's Studies Association conference with a group of students pretty recently. And this is something I've been talking about for a long time, but the entire conference, the theme was killing rage. Because a lot of people are feeling really strong emotions about some of the things happening right now in the world. But this came up over and over and over in breakout session after breakout session. Not being afraid to say no to things that don't enrich your experience, don't bring you joy, or don't align with your goals. Your time is valuable. And, I think especially after all the things that our communities have been through in the last few years, being mindful of your emotional resources and what's really enriching you and your life, and is part of your long-term goals or even your short-term goals is important. And I think really, like, also as a society, we're starting to move in a direction where people are a little bit more understanding of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if there's something where you're like, oh, I really don't want to do that, think about it. Like, is it something that you really need to do?
Right.
Maybe if it's like a class, it's classwork for your grade, yes. But like if it's an extracurricular that you feel like is maybe draining you more than giving you back, maybe you join a different group or you change your role. Or so I think just kind of thinking through how you're using your time and your resources.
I think those are great tips. Thank you.
Yeah.
That last one is meaningful to me because I had to learn early on as a professional, because I have a lot of capacity. I get tapped for lots of things, but I had to learn how to say, that's a really great offer. I can't do that now, or I'm not interested in that right now, but let me think about who might be. And so I tried to commit internally to maybe thinking of somebody who might find that offer meaningful and making that recommendation if I could. I didn't pressure myself to always come up with somebody else, but sometimes you get offered stuff but wait, Susie, who hasn't had opportunities, or, Jim or whoever it is, there might be somebody else that I could offer that to. And then that, I'll be honest, it makes me feel a little less guilty because I want to help and contribute, but I've also been enculturated to want to help and contribute, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I was thinking, it's interesting that you bring up that gender piece. Of wanting to help and contribute. I think there's also this piece of, like you were mentioning, like bringing people in, and folks that maybe don't have as much opportunity a lot of times in the culture we live in, which has a lot of internal bias, sexism, racism, homophobia. Like sometimes people aren't necessarily thought of, and like bringing them in can also be super meaningful and impactful, giving different people opportunities in different spaces. So yeah, I appreciate that too.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as we wrap up, I've got one last question for you. And I know it's probably a little early to get details, but always curious to know, your office often is one that is tapped to do programming for Women's History Month. Are there any plans that your office has, or things that students should keep an eye out for, since this video is airing on March 3rd and March is Women's History Month nationally? Is there anything they should keep their eyes open for this month?
Definitely. So there's a couple things that I think have already been tentatively scheduled, and then I'll start with that. So the body project that we already talked about, we'll definitely be having a couple of sessions in March. Right now it's scheduled for the 7th and the 10th. I think we'll probably be having those in the afternoons, but probably by the time this is launched, that'll be confirmed, and we'll have a link in the notes for this video. So you can check that out. The other thing that we're just confirming now is actually with your office, Tierza. We're part of the LEAD workshop series. I've got some really deeply experienced graduate student leaders this year. One of them, Myra, has been working as a financial advisor for quite some time before she went back to get her master's degree, and is going to be doing some stuff on finances and financial health for women and femme folks and other marginalized people, March 29th with the LEAD workshop series. And another one of my students, Max, is going to be working with one of our undergraduate students to do a workshop that I developed last semester on self-advocacy in the workplace. Max is a pretty new graduate student, but he also has a lot of published work and has been doing some really wonderful things in his department. So I'm excited for him to lead that workshop on self-advocacy. So if you were really into the tips that we talked about before, that might be a great opportunity to explore that conversation more. And I think for anyone else who's potentially interested in partnering or working together, we'll be putting out a call for programs on Women's History Month after winter break. I guess when this launches, y'all will probably, that time might have come past. But if you're interested, if you have any programming that's going on, it'll all be on our website.
All right, I will link that. I will link that website.
Yeah, we have a tab on programs and events, and it's under Women's History Month, which also has a lot of information. Kind of, sometimes the programming times and days don't work out for all students. So it also has a lot of websites and information and education that you can check out asynchronistically if you want to learn more, but don't necessarily feel like, maybe you work a couple of jobs and like coming to programming is really challenging, or you are a remote student and you typically don't come to campus. There's other ways for you to engage. It's on the website, and we'll also have some stuff up on our social media.
All right, thank you. Well, yeah. I appreciate you meeting with me today, and sorry everybody for the kitty bomb that has happened twice in this video. That's life. But I appreciate you being with me today, Jill. And folks, again, we'll have down in the show notes information to connect with Jill's website, the CII website, and various other resources. So thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye, everybody.